Hey, Talia here, and today on I Got Back Up, I'm joined by Ellen R.B. Smith. Ellen's story is one of facing isolation, rejection, and seeking attention with acts of rebellion, shoplifting, drinking, fighting, during the struggles of adolescence. When Ellen was yearning for belonging, identity, and independence, we all have a power within, waiting to be unleashed. So, Ellen, when you hear the phrase I got back up, what does it make you think and feel?
It makes me think of my whole entire book that I just wrote, Memoirs of a Suburban Troublemaker, and how and I talked to my editor about this when we were trying to figure out my overarching theme, which is troublemaking initially. And then it kind of turned into troublemaking for others, fighting for others. So, and every time I talked about something that major that happened to me, she was like, "Well, what motivated you to change your situation?" And it was basically like every time I fell, anytime I had something terrible happen, I always started over. So, for example, my parents got divorced. We had to move into a new neighborhood, and it was a huge socioeconomic downgrade. And it was me just kind of picking up the pieces of my life. That was um, the major fall, I guess you could say. But there were so many others after that. And little by little, I came to being an adult, contributing to society.
There's a really important message what you said there, and just literally a phrase, little by little, because I think it really is in life. It's like one step at a time, one day at a time. It is little by little. And every single time, day, step, whatever it might be, those little moments add up. It's
Yeah.
not big, 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 big all the time. It's little by little. And I think that's a really important message because a lot of the times when we don't always see the big events happening, whether, the good or the bad, or,
Mm.
we're like, well, nothing's working, nothing's happening. These big things that I want in my life aren't here. But actually, little by little, they're all adding up to give you whatever it is, whoever you want to be, to however you want to take your life. It's little by little.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, it took a long time to figure out what I wanted to be and what I wanted to do with my life. And I still don't feel like I'm a fully evolved human. I'm always going to be a work in progress, but I definitely feel like I've come a long way since being an angry kid about my parents' divorce, um, which is kind of the start of my book. But there were, again, so many opportunities for me to kind of put things in perspective. And at the end of the book, I kind of talk about how I look at it now as all of these things that happened for me, as opposed to happening to me as a victim, even though I was a victim of bullying, and I was a victim of a hostile work environment. Um, so many things that I could have just sat in my basement and cried about. But instead, I got back up and, figured out what to do next. So I actually wrote a list of all of these terrible things that happened. Just I could have some talking points because I wasn't really sure where this was going to go. But I literally every year, starting in 1983, I was born in 1975. Every year since then, have been able to document something up until around 2023. Maybe not every year, but certainly every year from 1983 until 1995.
Then what I want you to do then is I want to kind of give you the floor, and I want you to, if you want to document, you want to say what's happened every year, take us through the
Sure.
journey of your life to end up to where you are today, the person you are today. And like you just said before, the things that they didn't happen to you, they happened for you.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so I grew up in Reston, and I feel like it's important to talk a little bit about Reston itself. It was established in 1964, before the Civil Rights Act, before Virginia versus Loving, before any fair housing in a red Confederate state, Virginia, and it was the first open and integrated community. It's called Reston after its namesake, Robert E. Simon, who had 4 Jewish grandparents, and he always felt like a second-class citizen his whole life, even though he went to Harvard and his dad owned Carnegie Hall. And then he sold the Carnegie Hall to be able to afford the land that is now Reston. So I like to think of my hometown literally being created by the arts. And I think the reason why Bob Simon built the town of Reston was so that people didn't have to feel marginalized like he did throughout his life. And just an example, even when he was at Harvard, he couldn't get into a program called Hasty Pudding because he was Jewish. He couldn't get into the Boy Scouts troop that he wanted. So those are just some acts of anti-Semitism that he had to overcome. So when I moved here in 1980, I was about to turn 5, and we had a nuclear family. We were moving into this really picturesque neighborhood on a block with other nuclear families, modern homes, single family homes on a lake right across the street from an elementary school, a intermediate school, and my high school, which is where I ended up going. And I almost completed it. But then, when I was 8, my parents got divorced, and it just kind of ripped my whole world apart. Like, the floor came out from underneath me, all of my roots were gone. And I just felt like a failure, like everything, I wanted my family back together, and I could not bring them together no matter what I did. And so when I started, trying to process these feelings, I was acting out a lot. I was sent to a psychologist. Apparently, I was beating up my sister, who is wonderful, by the way. Her name is Julie, and she lives across the street from me now. So the end of the story, just to fast forward a little bit, we are now getting along very well. But that's I was acting out. I was super angry, and it took me probably I don't know. I still don't know if I'm over it. Like when you have this concept of a family and then it's completely destroyed, it kind of makes its mark. And even when I majored in psychology, I feel like a lot of people major in psychology just so they can figure out the answer to their own problems. I realized that children of divorce that came from broken homes put a higher emphasis on trust than they do on love, and I see myself doing that even in my marriage now. So it's still something that I'm trying to get over. But I feel like I've come such a long way, and writing this memoir was such a cathartic and therapeutic experience, that it's really helped me to see inside myself through all this self-reflection. But once my parents got divorced, I started noticing how other kids had nicer lawns, nicer houses. Their parents drove nicer cars, and I didn't have the wardrobe that I had wanted. So I felt like I was getting bullied for that. And I was. I mean, I definitely was bullied by several kids at my school. It was 5 amalgamated uh, elementary schools that came into one, and everybody had their different protocols. They had their different social statuses and their different set of bullies, and there was quite a few. And my elementary school was the first underground elementary school with oh my god, I can't think. Can we edit this part out? It was the first underground elementary school with solar panel electricity and heating, and it was pretty groundbreaking. And then once we went to Langston Hughes, all of those schools came together, and it was dangerous. The administration was completely different. There was this labyrinth of lockers that were 6 feet tall, and anytime somebody got in a fight, the administration would have to climb up, like scale the walls of these 6-foot lockers, and then jump down into the nucleus of the argument and try and break it up. And a lot of times they didn't. People just got beat up. So it was pretty scary. There were guns at the school. There were knives. Like people were there was a lot of fights. And I got into several of them as a victim. And then once I once I met my girlfriend Bahija, who lived in my neighborhood, that was one of the pivotal moments of my book and my life. Bahija was living just 4 doors down, and she was suffering from abuse and was facing her own demons, but so took a liking to me and took me under her wing. And she taught me how to fight. She taught me, she would walk me all the way to my intermediate school, which was like, I don't know, like basically a block away from her high school. So she would have to backtrack to go there. And I asked her, why did you do that? Or why are you doing this for me? And she's like, because I don't want you to get beat up. And she recognized that I was a skinny, awkward, insecure white girl that needed some protection. So anyway, so that was kind of a pivotal moment. She showed me that even though she was getting bullied at school and she had a terrible home life, she was able to overcome that and start standing up for herself. So that ultimately led me to start standing up for myself and for others. Um, so that was the beginning. But there were some other underlying issues of anger and needing attention and lashing out. I started shoplifting for attention, and I eventually got arrested, and that sent me to court, a mandatory court date, right in the middle of camp that my mom had paid for, and she didn't have a lot of money, so this was a really big deal, called Camp Louise. And growing up Jewish, I mean, I'm Jewish. I'm agnostic, but I have a Judaic heritage. And I had always kind of felt like an outsider because of that life robbery, Simon. And so when I went to this Jewish camp and I started like realizing I could fit in here, I'm not the minority anymore. This was one of those tabula rasas. Like I could start over, I could pick myself back up, and nobody knew that I was getting in trouble for shoplifting. Nobody knew, that I had a reputation for, doing stupid things like drinking underage and smoking cigarettes and any of that stuff. I could just fit in with the good kids. So that was a nice turning point. But ultimately, I had to go back to face the music at court. And then I just kept doing it at home. Like I kept shoplifting and I kept sneaking out of the house and getting in fights. And then I picked up sports. I was a swimmer for 12 years, a competitive swimmer, and I played field hockey. But in 10th grade, I got kicked out. I got kicked off the team. And I was so upset about it. Like that was my identity. I wanted to be a jock. I wanted to be somebody that, had a team of people surrounding me. So that was another time where I had to kind of like just brush off the dirt and start over. And the silver lining of that story was when I went to the University of Tennessee, I started the first club field hockey team that went varsity my senior year. So, and all of those things, like I wouldn't have done that had I not played field hockey and felt the need that I need to prove myself had I not got kicked off that team. So I crashed my car when I was a junior, and I almost OD'd on something called Rush. It was an inhalant that I drank because I was an idiot. And there's really no silver linings to those other than I learned not to do that again. And I kind of feel like by the time my kids are going to be of age to drive, I'm going to give them a piece of shit car because they're probably going to wreck it. I feel like you don't really understand the power of, having or the responsibility of driving until you actually get in an accident. So unfortunately, I don't know if that's how other people learn, but that's how I learned. And I think we all learn by making mistakes. So those are just some of the things that at a young age happened. When I got older, I almost got kicked out of college. I was lucky to even get into college because I was kicked out of high school. My fights ultimately led to other people realizing that they could upgrade their rank if they got in an altercation with me. And because I had so much anger within me from getting bullied, I call it an alter ego in my book name, and I named it Zelda because that was a name that my mom was going to give me um, when I was born, and I kind of kept that uh, in the back of my mind as something important. Like I'm going to need an alter ego one day, and so every time I would get in an argument, I was so fearful that someone was going to beat me up that I used everything I had. I scratched, I kicked, I punched, and I never really was like inside my body when I was doing this. It was like the anger just took over like a demon. Um, and I never lost a fight again. And I wish, in retrospect, that a lot of those arguments could have been solved with words. I know at this age I have the power to diffuse them, but at the time I just didn't have the maturity or the foresight to be able to do it. You know, I would rather nip it in the bud whenever it happened at school or in the parking lots instead of like waiting for them to chase me down on the paths. Reston has 55 miles of paths, and those paths can be really dangerous. And there was a couple incidents on them where I ended up having to run away. Luckily, I lived up a giant hill, and nobody nobody wanted to chase me. So fighting was really bad. I ultimately got kicked out of high school because of it. And had I not had that experience of going from a school, this was 4 months before I was about to graduate from high school. So I went to school with the same people on the same block for 13 and a half years. So going to a new school and realizing that I could make new friends, I could, be cool with teachers and impress them gave me the confidence to know that I could do it again far away. And had that not happened to me, I probably would have gone to Radford with the same toxic people that I was friends with in high school, and ended up doing a lot of the same stupid shit, like a merry-go-round of toxicity, like I'd been doing for almost all of my intermediate and high school years. So in college, I feel like that was a big pivotal moment for me because I just took every opportunity that was given to me. I was in choir, I started a band, I played field hockey, I explored all kinds of majors because I had to end up taking all of my freshman classes over again since I almost failed out of school because I made my priorities getting to know people because I was 8 hours from home. I knew no one in the state and I just wanted to connect with people, and that was more important to me than my schoolwork. But I quickly found out that if I didn't focus on my schoolwork, then I would have to go home with my tail between my legs, which I didn't want to do. So anyway, that's a lot for so far. I'm only about like a third of the way through the book.
I want to ask then, you obviously spoke a lot about anger, and obviously starting from very early on, and it transitioned in lots of different ways throughout your life and manifested in lots of different ways, especially in your early years. How did you find, I mean, we can go all the way to now or up until that point, how did you find that you were able to, did you start to learn to deal with the anger and not express it in certain ways? Things, things like that. But just quickly, I want to make one point is while
Sure.
I remember you said about how, you know, in hindsight now, a lot of those fights could have been dealt with, with words. And you
Right.
know that now. But I think
Yeah.
that's one thing that as human beings, sometimes when we look back on whatever we've done, we
Mhm.
go, oh man, I wish I'd done it differently. But the thing is we can't beat ourselves. I mean, pardon the pun, we can't actually beat ourselves up about that. We can't be angry or upset with ourselves
Mhm.
because we only knew at the time what we knew at the time. We only had the tools in our, capacity in our brains, in our minds, whatever it is. We only had the tools with how to deal with it at the time. As we have, whether it's matured or we've got older or we've been through different things in life, we find the different avenues and paths and tools to then deal with other things. So, yes, we might deal with things differently now to what we did
Yeah.
in the past, but we couldn't deal with them that way in the past because we didn't have the tools.
Right.
So that's just, I just wanted to make a point on that before we do move on. But yes, I just wanted to ask then about the anger. Was there a way that you started to learn or figure out how to deal with it?
Yeah, I mean, every altercation that I had been in, um, I I would replay it in my head that night, and I would be up all night, and it was just like a loop, like a neurotic thing. I could not stop doing this. And I would see myself as a cave woman, just like scrappy and vicious. And it was like I saw myself as this primitive form, and I was so ashamed of it every time. But I still, like, when I would get in these situations, the fear of getting beat up would just take over me, because there was 2 or 3 incidents, where somebody slapped me in the face at school. A guy strangled me. Luckily, somebody pulled him off. I'm still alive. And there was one more where a guy pushed me down into the snow. 2 boys pushed me down in the snow and like rubbed snow in my face. So, like, those 3 moments, I think, created this alter ego, created this anger, that would just take over. And it took me years, and anger management therapy, to realize, like, I didn't want to be that person. I didn't want to be this cave woman. And I didn't want people to have that perception of me either. I mean, like, I take art classes now, and a lot of the older women have read my book, and they're like, "What's shocking to me is all the fighting. Like, I just can't. You look so innocent." And people have said that my whole life. You look so nice, and I am nice. But when I'm pushed, or when I feel threatened, or when I back then, that's what I would do. And I think, the biggest moment for me was when I was in college and I got into a fight with a street preacher who was like shouting obscenities at all of the women, you know, for being in school to begin with. He didn't think we belonged there. Um, and I hit him. And I got like the whole crowd involved. I was like, "Do you think that, these kind of insults warrant physical retaliation?" Everyone was like, "Yeah, do it." But the cops were there, and I did not know this. And they put me in the cop car, and I remember sitting in the back of it thinking, "Oh my God, am I going to jail? Like, is this going to be my life? I don't want to be in jail." And like, I just saw like my future, being in jail, and I didn't want that. And luckily, there was a teacher there that, he had been insulting earlier, that came to my rescue and got me out of the car. But that was my last fight. I never fought again after that, because I was so afraid of facing the consequences. I was already of age. I think I was 19. So, there's no juvie anymore. It's real jail. So I think that, combined with my anger management therapy, I had to. I didn't get along very well with my mom, in high school, when I was getting kicked out and I was getting in so much trouble. I ended up living with my dad, and when I came home from college, there really wasn't a home because my dad had moved to Pennsylvania. So, it was either I repaired my relationship with my mother, or I'm shit out of luck. So she was like, "If you want to live with me, you've got to take anger management therapy." So that definitely helped. And it helped me recognize the signs of being angry. Like, for me, I would only see red when I was angry. And when this thing took over, like, I had this drive to finish the job, like, until somebody was unconscious. So instead of going through that, I would just say, "Okay, I'm angry," take a deep breath, turn around and walk away, or picture myself in the other person's shoes. What would I want to be said to me to kind of talk me off the ledge, or, diffuse the argument? So, those were skills that I definitely incorporated often. And I was able to apply them immediately. And I think I squashed it. Although I still have moments, I still have road rage, but now I'm like, okay, well, just picture them with a gun in their glove compartment. Just think it all the way through. And now I have so much to lose. I have kids, I have a husband, I have a nice house. Like, I don't want to go to jail. That jail thing's always in the back of my mind.
In a way, obviously, you were saying some things didn't have a silver lining, and obviously, you didn't want to go to jail, but in a way, you said that moment is one of the things that made you go, "Okay, I need to stop this." Because we do sometimes have those moments, don't we? The moment where everything changes and we say to ourselves, "Right, I have to stop, whatever it is. Or I have to get help, or I need to, it's a moment of acceptance. It's like I have to change this. Um, Something I think about when you're talking about Zelda,
Yeah.
so this anger personality. Obviously, this is how I see it, and it can be very differently to, everyone else, but it's we as human beings sometimes when we go through whatever it might be and we have these in inverted commas negative emotions,
Mhm.
anger being in inverted commas a negative emotion, we we need defense mechanisms. So we as human beings, nobody tells us to do this. We do it ourselves. Our brain does it itself. We create defense mechanisms. And Zelda was almost, in my opinion, the defense mechanism with the anger. So when you got angry, Zelda would come out because Zelda was
Oh,
anger.
yeah,
She was
absolutely.
she was the defense mechanism of anger. And so she would come in to fight back the anger, to express the anger, to release in a way the anger, because yes, it came from fear again.
Mhm.
And a lot of things happen in our lives and we don't always realize, but a lot of things happen in our lives from fear. A lot of the
Mhm.
things we do, we say, react, it comes from fear. Someone once said to me, and I still stand by it, that a lot of the well, not even a lot of the time in life we do things because of two different emotions. We do things out of love, or we do things out of fear. And it makes so much sense because when you're doing something out of love because you're not scared. You just know. You just know. You
Right.
just know. But when you're doing something out of fear, you don't know it's fear. That's the thing. You don't know the underlying thing is fear. Whatever it might be that comes out, again, in inverted commas, negative emotions, come out with fear. And the things that you were scared about kind of created this anger and this rage. And then, because a lot of the things you've been saying is, you were scared of this, or you were scared of that, you were scared of this happening or that happening. And so
Yeah.
the anger was coming out. So it's really interesting when you really kind of you take it all apart, because I love to take things apart. And
Yeah.
you take it all apart. And if you can go all the way back to the very, 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 very not beginning, or the little moment, we
Mhm.
do things out of fear. And I think even to the point where somebody that wants to apply for a dream job, let's say. I know this is
Mhm.
a very different example, but they want to apply for a dream job. And for
Yeah.
some reason, they won't send the application. And instead, they'll go, oh, I'm not qualified enough. Or, oh, but I might have to move country. Oh, but I might have to work longer hours. Oh, but just a
Yeah.
string of excuses, right? But realistically, they might get the job. Okay, they might have to move country. But if this is a dream job that they really want, if there's a list of excuses why they're not just sending the application, it's because they're scared. They're
Mhm.
actually scared of two things. They're either scared of, if they get the job, it could be
Mhm.
such an amazing change. It could be such a big change in their life. They may not be ready for change, because as human beings also, we're programmed to not want change. It's the
Right.
weirdest concept, but we're programmed to not want change. Or
Mhm.
they're scared if they don't get it, rejection, feeling unworthy, feeling not good enough, and all the negative emotions that come back up again. So, again,
Yeah.
even just, you know, piecing all of that together, why someone might not apply for a dream job comes
Yeah.
down to fear.
Yeah. It's interesting that you chose that example, because I definitely my whole career have been trying to help other people achieve their goals in their career, but I also have this big chapter about getting promoted. And I would have to learn all kinds of new things. And I think that's another reason why people are afraid to apply for certain jobs, because they have to increase their skill set. They know what they know and they're comfortable in their day job. And I was constantly pushing for more and more responsibility so that I could get promoted, just so I could say I did. But I also wanted to pave the way for others, which I ultimately did. But when I was in college, like I've always loved singing. I've always loved getting up on stage. And anytime somebody gets married or there's some kind of event, I'm always grabbing the microphone to do a speech. And like I told you before this call, my mom said, you love being the center of attention. You're going to do great on this podcast. You're very good in that situation. So I remember whenever I would get nervous before I would go on stage with my band, it was called Yellow Number Five, and it's actually on my YouTube channel. I have a song that I wrote called Zelda, about getting kicked out of school, about taking a bunch of sleeping pills and, getting back up and becoming a star, even though I never became a rock star. It's a failed dream of mine, but life's not over. um, I remember channeling that fear, those nerves, and turning it into excitement that I get to show the world what I can do. Like I have this opportunity to talk to people that I would have never otherwise spent time with and show them this skill, tell them this story. And even right now, like this is a huge opportunity. So thank you, Talia, for allowing me to share my story. Because, I think that's what gets in people's heads before they have to do a public speaking event or anything really, like a new relationship. You really have to just channel that negative energy and turn it into something positive, to work for you instead of against you.
Well, there's a very fine line between excitement and fear, and I actually think they can manifest as the exact same feelings in your body, which is really strange.
Yep.
It is really strange, like
Increased heart
anxiety.
rate, sweating.
100%. And I think that's the thing that can sometimes be quite confusing with anxiety is that sometimes actually you're not anxious because of the fear, you're actually anxious because you're excited. But your head doesn't always work that out, which is what's so interesting. But you're right, it's a way to channel it and
Hmm.
to channel it into what you can do, how you can show people whatever it is, how you
Yeah.
can really make a mark or an impact in whatever the thing that you're doing. But again, one thing that you mentioned before, which is a really important point to note and to just talk about, is that again, a lot of the times the things we are scared of and we don't do whatever it might be is
Hmm.
because we know we're going to have to work harder if we also get the thing. And as human beings, again, we are so comfortable doing easy. We
Yeah.
like the easy way out. We will do, we always want to get the quickest way to work or we don't like traffic because it's long. Like we like easy and quick and simple. And as soon as you might have to work hard on something,
Hmm.
we freak out for some reason. We freak out. And it's again, it's a concept that I'm still understanding and learning about, but we freak out. And the thing is, the amazing miracles and dreams, they don't just happen overnight.
That's right.
People don't win gold medals in the Olympics because they woke up on a Monday and went, I want to be an Olympic runner
We're
tomorrow.
discovered.
And then suddenly they, won a gold
Yeah.
medal on Tuesday. They trained really hard. They worked really hard. And that's just something to note is that, okay, things might scare us in life. Our dreams might scare us in life.
Hmm.
And we might think, oh, wow, we are going to have to work hard. We might have to wake up early. We might have to work longer hours. We might have to change our routine, our rhythm, whatever it might be. But if it's worth it and you want it to happen, you have to put the work in.
Yeah. You got to try and put yourself out there, get uncomfortable. I spent a lot of my career doing those things and creating roles for myself. Or, I joined when I worked at Amazon, an organization called Glamazon. It's an amalgamation of gay and lesbian Amazon. To you know to step outside my comfort zone and again speak out for others. I was the historian archivist, and I really enjoyed that experience because it wasn't anything that I could have, used for my promotion. It was all just extra. But it was fun, to be a part of something bigger. And it was a lot of work, but I wanted to do it and I wanted to have that. I wanted to check that box, that I stood up for something and for somebody else. And I did it professionally. So I'm trying to think of other things that are kind of getting back up. Um,
But it's
so
amazing when we do fulfill ourselves and we fulfill,
yeah,
what it is. And you were just saying about work and to be able to do that professionally. Like it's amazing when, however it might be, that we can fulfill ourselves through, especially
yeah,
through work, but through different means.
yeah. I mean, recently my husband broke his foot. He was sanding the ceiling of our beach house on a ladder, and he was barefoot. And instead of getting down, moving the ladder over, and getting back up, he kind of reached and then fell. So he hasn't been able to walk for 2 months. And I could do a whole podcast about this. So recently, like I want to say 2 weeks ago, I fell off the treadmill. I was like looking up. I take the classes super early at Orange Theory. Um, and I was looking up because I couldn't find my heart rate on the big screen. So I fell off the treadmill and I hurt myself. But I was like, I can't be injured. I've got my husband at home injured. There's nobody that can do the lunches and the breakfasts and the dinners and the walking of the dogs and the dishes and the laundry and everything. I have to be that person. So I got back on the treadmill and ran with the, well, I walked. I think I walked, but I ran again later and it still hurts. But, sometimes it's mind over matter, like my circumstances right now that require that. So hopefully I don't get COVID because everybody around me seems to be getting it.
Oh, hopefully not. Hopefully not. That's just something we all seem to just have to live with now.
Absolutely.
Um,
Um, so there's definitely more stories of falling and getting back up if you want me to keep going, but
Yeah,
most
I wanted to say then obviously we kind of started to dip a little bit into post college, but whatever you kind of want to mention moving forward of other stories,
okay.
anything else that's happened, then feel free to.
Yeah, so there was in 1999. I told you I wanted to be a rock star, so I moved to New York City thinking that was going to be my big break. But I also had to support myself. New York City is extremely expensive. I had a fifth floor walk up for 11.75 per month. It was like 300 square feet, and my job at the time I was working for a company that I call Small Onion in my book, and it was very misogynistic. There was a lot of toxic behavior at that job. And I was going out with my coworkers because I didn't really have a lot of friends. And we enjoyed each other, but we spent all of our money on bars. And one night I came into work the next day, and my boss felt like he had been excluded from that outing and set up this disciplinary meeting about it. And so I was really threatened because that was my job. Like I didn't have a way to pay my rent and I was doing okay. Um, I made 40,000 a year and I was getting commissions. And I think I had closed like 5 deals or something like that. But once that happened, they were like, you need to come in the office at 7 a.m. And I was like, okay. So I started doing it and I ended up staying till like 11 o'clock at night on a Friday and looking at the clock and thinking, what am I doing here? But I was closing deals all over the country and I was taking opportunities that my coworkers weren't. And I ended up being, getting, it was called Technical Recruiter of the Month every month. And I was doing great. And so I think I needed that kick in the ass to kind of like light a fire under me and under my ambition. Um, but I was lonely there. Like New York is a city with 8 million people at night, 12 million people during the day, and all being surrounded by so many people almost made me feel a bit more lonely. So, again, 9 months later, came home with my tail between my legs. I did not become a famous rock star, but I was pretty good at my job, and I was able to transfer with the company to a local branch in McLean, Virginia, and start over again. But so many, like in the field of HR and recruiting, it's a very thankless job. We're always the first to go because we're considered overhead. So many falls. There was the dot-com bust, and I had a great job for a dot-com company and had to find another job after that. And then there was the 2008 and 9 recession. So I kind of had to reinvent myself and go from recruiting to HR, business development, contracts management. So I had to continue to reinvent myself through work every time that this happened. And then most recently, there was a threat or a looming recession in 2020. So in January 2023, I took a payout from Amazon to write this book. So this is a completely new path for me. I didn't major in journalism. I'm not a historian, but I really wanted to document Reston's history and my own because I've always kept journals and I've always like loved keeping track because I thought you can't make the shit up. One day I'm going to write a book. So this was a huge turning point for me, and I knew that I could write because I'd been doing it for my job. I wrote these documents called the role guidelines for my particular job. There was no path to advancement. I had been hired at the most senior level job at the time, and so I wrote them myself. And it took about 3 years to get them through. But once that happened, I ended up getting promoted into a principal role, the first of its kind for client leads. And that wasn't the first. Like I had done every kind of documentation that crossed my manager's desk. I had to audit and approve or edit. And that I wrote a video to save 30% of people that did my job's time. And we say the same thing over and over again, and we found ourselves sounding like robots. So I ended up just writing a script for a video and using that so that I could focus on when I met with these candidates, what was really important to them and what was important to me. So there was that. There was another document that I had to write. There was tons of opportunities at Amazon. It's a huge writing intensive company. But every time I had an idea, I would write it down. I would present it verbally and in writing, and then push it through to the finish line. So doing that over and over again gave me the confidence to know that I could write something meaningful. And I figured if I'm going to do this for a giant company, why not do it for myself? And then it was a matter of, okay, what do I want to write about? And I just felt like my story, eventually with the feedback from my friends and my editors and pre-readers, that my story was good enough to stand on its own. Initially, I had done like 175,000 word journal of everything that had ever happened to me in my entire life. Reston's history. I'd interviewed 50 people and people that I thought represented Reston. And I showed this to my editor, and she was like, okay, well, one, I keep skipping the Reston parts to get to you. And two, you need to put this in a more linear fashion because I was just like all over the place, like, backing into the equation and writing for the sake of pictures or writing for the sake of Reston's story and making that connection to Robert E. Simon. I kept comparing him to the grandfather that I never met because he had died before I was born, but he was like my replacement grandfather, even though I only met him twice. But he is a celebrity in this town. And Reston has about, I want to say 70,000 residents now. So that's my base right now. But I'd like to expand beyond that.
It's interesting because one big thing about you is that throughout the whole story is that, and everything you said is you put yourself out there for the opportunities. You said at college you signed up to, everything that you could, and even, going to New York, having this job, and everything that you've done, you've put yourself out there and you've taken the opportunity when the opportunities come. So a lot of people wouldn't. They might go to college and not join up for anything. They might not take the job. They might not say, okay, sure, I'll work at 7 a.m. And you have constantly throughout everything still put yourself out there and taken the opportunities and said yes. And I think that's what's so important, is that you do take an opportunity. Is when opportunities are given to us in life, a lot of the times I think they are usually only really given to us once. And if we say no to the opportunity, there's a big chance we won't get it again.
Yeah, like Eminem, don't squander it.
Exactly. Or if we hesitate for too long and we overthink it too much, or we worry about things that might go wrong or right or whatever it might be, again, it might slide past us and someone else will grab it from us. And when opportunities are given to us in life, look, I understand we don't always want to do them, and sometimes we do say no, and they really aren't going to affect our lives much. But a lot of the times, just say yes, just do the opportunity, just see what can happen. The worst thing that's going to happen is that it's just not going to work out, hopefully.
Yeah.
But if that hopefully is the worst thing. But most of the time, if it doesn't work out, then at least and then you can move on to something else. But if it does work out, that's pretty like cool. And that's
Yeah.
pretty exciting. And you can see where it can take you. And in a way, you've said a lot. It's not about what's happened to you, it's what's happened for you. And obviously you said there are some things that didn't have a silver lining, which I
Mhm.
get. But again, you've also mentioned how different things have happened in your life. And if they didn't happen, you wouldn't have done the next thing and the next
Right.
thing. And, you might not have this book, you might not be an
Yeah.
author. And, there's not everyone in the world is an author and has their own book, especially about themselves and everything
Right.
they've been through, which is amazing. So, I'm sure, everyone says there are things that they wish didn't happen in life. However, it guides people through life to the person they've become and continue to become today.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I feel like we all are our experience, and the way to test who you are usually happens in those moments of crisis. They do kind of define you in that how you react to them. And I've had so many upsets, right? But in college, I had a friend in the book. Her name is Jocelyn, that I interviewed recently, and I was like, "What do you remember about me?" Because I was interviewing them for their story, but also, just to get a different perception than my own of my life. And she was like, "You had so much confidence." She's like, "That's why I always like wanted to wear your clothes. And I thought by, wearing your clothes and sleeping in your bed that, I could become you." And I'm like, I never saw myself that way. But there was always a little voice in my head that was like, this relationship sucks. You deserve better, eventually. Like it took a while and many, many relationships to finally find my prince, my husband. But like there were so many times where I was like, I just felt like a loser or unintelligent, or wasn't good enough. Um, but I think because I forced myself to listen to that inner voice, the one propelling me to take these chances, and channel that fear into excitement about what the world has to offer me, and vice versa. Um, I think I think that's really helped, is just to, trust my own instincts and be myself and be unapologetic about it, because I think when society is telling you you need to be a certain way, or act a certain way, it's really hard to go against the grain. But I found that that's helped me a lot. It's just to be myself and take on
Being
challenges. Yeah.
being ourselves is one of the most important things, really. No one's going to take you away from you. You're actually only going to take you away from you. And yes, society might try to fit you into a hole like everyone else, but we don't all have to just fit into society in those ways. And if we have dreams, ambitions, or we have whatever it is that we want to do and we want to achieve, even if everyone's telling us no, or you're not going to do it, or they're knocking our confidence, or they're knocking us in whatever way, if
Yeah.
we the only person that's really going to believe in you is you. And if you
Right.
don't even believe in you, then no, your dreams aren't going to come true, because why else would anyone believe in you if you don't believe in you? um,
Right.
and on that, you had a friend that wanted to wear your clothes, sleep in your bed to get your kind of confidence. What's
Yeah.
ironic is that we all have that confidence. We all have that self respect. We all have that self worth. We all have that strength, that bravery, that courage. We all have it, but it's really deep down.
Yeah.
It's really deep down. And for some of us, it's easier to access, and for others, it's harder to access. But you can look at someone and you can wish, you said it as well earlier on, you can look at someone and you can say, but they have nicer, better,
Mhm.
more than me, whatever it is. But especially with regards to confidence and personalities and things like that, is you and strength and courage and bravery, you also have it as well. We all do have it. It's just, like I said, it's deep, deep down. And just because someone else has it doesn't mean that you don't. So almost in a way, channel that person, think, wow, they've got that incredible confidence. I'm talking to anyone that's listening, they've got that incredible confidence that I want. You
Right.
have it. You
Mhm.
just need to find your own way to bring it out and express it.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, when I was in eighth grade, I was diagnosed with a learning disability, ADHD, and slight dyslexia. And I never really paid attention to the dyslexia. I didn't think I had it until I started doing the audible version of my book. And I couldn't get through a paragraph without messing up or the words jumping around the page. Like it became really apparent. And my mom ended up doing the forward. And when she was when she was reading it, she just knocked it out of the park, like didn't stumble once. And I was like, damn it, I thought I had inherited it from somebody, but I didn't. It's all me. But like I felt like that was another opportunity with ADHD. Like I was in special classes called Basic Skills Resource, where you get to, take on-time tests. You have a teacher that's devoted to just helping you with your homework. So again, another opportunity where I felt like I was a dummy, but then I got the silver lining, which was all of these, additional help, like untimed SATs, which I ended up not doing very well. And I can't believe I even got into college, but that might have been why I got into college. Maybe they wanted to take somebody on with a learning disability and make them, into somebody important. But I definitely had parts of my book are a love letter to the University of Tennessee you know, for staying with me. Like, I mean, my first semester, I got a 0.08 and then I got a 1.2. And I eventually made my way up to the dean's list for my last 2 years, but it took me that long to learn how to study and how to just get by in school because I was not prepared for it. It was completely different than high school. And Fairfax County, which is where I grew up and where I live now, has one of the best school systems in the country, but I had no idea what I was doing my freshman year. I didn't know what to read, what to study. And the classes were so big that like I just could not pay attention. And again, I was drinking coffee and staying up late at night playing cards with my dorm room friends. And that was great too, but I ended up learning nothing my freshman year. And having to do it all over again, but that's okay.
And then I just wanted to ask you then, what advice would you give to someone with everything in mind? What advice would you give to someone? And I want to base it around anger. What would you say to somebody from everything you've learned and you've been through when they feel that rage or that anger start to come out and start to boil? And I know you said, you still get angry sometimes.
Yeah,
What would you say to them? What would you say to them? What would you say when they're like, "Well, what can I do to just not
yeah.
express it, not bring it out, not let it, not let it loose?" What would you say?
Well, I mean, for me, like something like being able to defend myself was important. I was being bullied, and sometimes, there is no other option other than to just defend yourself. And learning how to do that. Like I put my kids in Taekwondo just so that they feel confident. Like if somebody were to attack them, that they could defend themselves. So I definitely think that that's important is knowing how to defend yourself so that you're not attacked because it's not okay to be physically assaulted. But when it comes to like anger and being out of control, that's when you need to take a deep breath, figure out, like, think through the scenario all the way to the end. Do you want to get suspended? Do you want to go to jail? Do you want to hurt somebody enough to, like really cause permanent damage? Can you live with that guilt? So those are the things that I would ask my kids to consider when if they were to get in these altercations, and if they were to develop an issue with anger and not being able to control it and feeling like you're out of control and then feeling guilty afterwards, like I was doing every single time, I would propose therapy because I am a huge proponent of it. I studied psychology. I think it's always good to have somebody in your life that you can talk to that's not biased and that can, help you through the difficult times. I wish I had the time to go to therapy every day. I feel like this is kind of therapy. So thank you, Talia. But that's what I would recommend if it's to the point where you feel like you're not in control of yourself.
And then on that, it's responding, not reacting. So I know
Mhm.
obviously we all react very quickly a lot of the time, But if we can, even if that is in that 1 second, stop ourselves from reacting, you're right, and think about all the things that might happen, even if it's a verbal argument and you are about to say something which you know you're going to regret literally as soon as it comes out of your mouth and you cannot
Yeah.
take it back. It's You're right. It's, can you just pause for 1 second and quickly think about all the things that you're probably going to feel really crappy and guilty about as soon as it happens, whatever it might be. And in that, you suddenly don't react, you respond. And it's learning to not be so reactive all the time and just, yeah, to respond a lot more.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then if somebody does want to find your book, where can they find it?
It's on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Walmart, I think sells it. I have an Audible version. I also have a website. It's ellenrbsmith.com, where you can get a signed copy. And I'm also going to eventually purchase, I have pictures in the book, like a picture section. And right now it's in black and white, but I was thinking of making a special package where I can sell it in color, but it's a little bit more expensive. And I also have these images that are chapter headings. And I basically used AI for that, where I plugged in like just certain elements of the chapter and got back these crazy images. So I'm really proud of those images and the chapter headings and the picture section, because ultimately, like initially I was going to write a picture book and just write to the pictures to show like these things actually happened to me. But then I just shortened it into the little picture section. So if you get it online and you have a physical book or you have it on the Kindle, you can see all those pictures and you can see the chapter headings. But if you listen to the book, you get to hear me sing, talking terrible accents. I butcher every single one. And also speak in other languages because I try to put a little German, Hebrew, Latin, Gaelic. Those are all in there too. So
That's wicked. I love that. That sounds so much fun. It's like a
it was
show.
fun. It was it was fun. I got the idea. I mean, I haven't read a book since 2012 before I gave birth. Because I just don't have time. So I listened to like 3 books a week. And I did so much research, and there was a book where I could hear somebody saying these songs. I'm like, oh, I could do that. I minored in vocal performance, but it's not my best work. Everything was one take.
Yeah, but sometimes the one take, the raw, authentic take, the
Yeah,
first one before you overthink everything,
right,
um,
exactly,
is the best one.
absolutely. And I'm not a trained, I don't know, accent person. Like I'm not a trained actress, but I wanted to be at one point. Who didn't, right?
Oh yeah, who didn't? I completely agree with you. Who didn't? Like, you're so right.
Well, it's still early. I mean, life's long.
You're never too old to be anything and do anything that you want in this life. Like, you're really, really not. So there are really famous actors and that, became extremely famous much later on in their lives. They weren't in their teens or 20s or even 30s.
Yeah, Leanne Morgan is one of my favorite comedians, and she's I think 58. I just read her book, and it was fantastic. And I love that she went to University of Tennessee too. So, Leanne, I've been trying to ping you on Instagram. I think you'll like my book too.
I love that. I love that. Well, hopefully she hears it or sees it somewhere. So we'll make sure she gets a copy somehow.
Okay, awesome.
Amazing. Is there anything else that you'd like to share today?
No, I don't think so. I feel like I've covered everything. And I didn't blow the whole book, so there are still some stories in there that won't be uh, were not revealed in this discussion. So, yeah, please buy it.
And even the ones that were, the book gives more detail and, talks about
Oh yeah,
things very differently. So, you can come away, anybody
yeah,
that's listening, and think, oh, but I know, little bits already. But you only actually do know little bits. You don't know the
yeah,
whole kind of picture of the follow through of the book. So, yeah, 100% go buy the book.
yeah. I like to think of it as a coming of age comedy. So I tried to be funny. My girlfriend, who is actually a comedian, her stage name is Frankie French. Check her out, everyone. She was like, you should do a one woman show. I'm like, again, with the accents, I can't do them.
Hey, but if you work hard and you'll be
Yeah,
able
maybe
to
I'll
you'll be
channel
able
that
to nail the
here.
accents. Just practice in front of the mirror. Just
That's right.
practice.
Oh, I'm good at that.
Amazing. Well, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on the show today.
Thank you so much for the opportunity, Talia. This has been wonderful.
Life will knock us down, sometimes hard and sometimes more than once. And when it feels impossible, know that your story isn't over yet. Sometimes when everything is falling apart, it's really falling into place. You have the power to rise, to heal, to make magic, and to evolve. And you have the power inside you. We all do. You have the power to get back up.